The Christie murders refer to a series of killings committed by John Reginald Halliday Christie, a British serial killer who murdered at least 8 women, including his wife, at 10 Rillington Place in London between the 1940s and early 1950s. The case became one of the most infamous miscarriages of justice in British history because an innocent man, Timothy Evans, was wrongly convicted and hanged for 2 of Christie's murders. John Christie was a former war veteran and police officer who later became a serial killer. He was a quiet, unassuming man who projected an air of respectability which allowed him to lure his victims, mostly women, into his home under false pretenses, often claiming he had medical knowledge. He used gas to render his victims unconscious before strangling them. Timothy Evans was a Welshman of limited intelligence who lived at 10 Rillington Place with his wife, Beryl Evans, and their baby daughter, Geraldine, in 1948. In November 1949, Evans went to the police and claimed that his wife had died after a botched abortion. However, inconsistencies in his statements led police to suspect foul play. The police searched the building and found Beryl and Geraldine's bodies in an outdoor wash house. Both had been strangled. Christie, who had a reputation as a respectable war veteran, testified that Evans had frequent arguments with Beryl and was responsible for the murders. This, combined with Evans's own contradictory statements, led to his conviction. Evans was found guilty of killing his baby daughter Geraldine. The murder of Beryl was not prosecuted, and hanged on March 9, 1950. After Evans's execution, Christie continued killing. In 1953, new tenants at 10 Rillington Place discovered human remains hidden behind a wall. This led to an investigation that uncovered multiple victims, including Christie's own wife Ethel and several other women he had lured into his home. When arrested, Christie confessed to multiple murders, including Beryl Evans, but not Geraldine, raising doubts about Evans's guilt. As the evidence against Christie mounted, doubts about Evans's conviction grew. A re-examination of the case found that the police had manipulated Evans into making false confessions. The trial failed to consider key evidence. Christie's testimony, which was instrumental in convicting Evans, was unreliable. In 1966, Evans received a posthumous pardon, acknowledging that he had been wrongfully executed. His case contributed significantly to the growing movement against the death penalty in Britain. The wrongful execution of Timothy Evans, along with other high-profile cases, fueled public opposition to capital punishment. In 1965, the UK formally abolished the death penalty for murder, partly due to the Evans case. The case of John Christie and Timothy Evans is one of Britain's most tragic miscarriages of justice. A serial killer was allowed to continue murdering while an innocent man was wrongfully hanged due to police incompetence and a flawed legal system. The case remains a chilling reminder of the dangers of the death penalty and wrongful convictions. Christie's psychology or the legal changes that followed. Christie's psychology or the legal changes that followed. John Reginald Halliday Christie was a deeply disturbed individual whose psychological makeup contributed to his horrific crimes. Several factors shaped his personality, including childhood trauma, sexual dysfunction, and an ability to manipulate others. Strict upbringing. Christie was raised in Yorkshire, England, in a household dominated by a strict and overbearing mother and older sisters. This may have contributed to his resentment toward women and feelings of inadequacy. Sexual dysfunction reports suggest that he struggled with impotence from an early age, which played a crucial role in his criminal behavior. His crimes often had a necrophilic element. He could only become aroused in situations where he had absolute control over a woman, typically after rendering them unconscious or lifeless. Manipulative and deceptive. Christie had a meek and unassuming demeanor, which made it easy for him to gain people's trust. Despite a history of petty crime and deception, he managed to maintain a facade of respectability, even securing a job as a War Reserve police officer during World War II. Lack of empathy. Christie showed no remorse for his crimes, even when confessing. He meticulously planned his murders, demonstrating cold-blooded calculation rather than impulsivity, obsession with control. His method of killing, gassing victims to make them unconscious before strangling them, revealed his desire for dominance and complete control over life and death. Christie fits the profile of a psychopathic serial killer, as he carefully selected his victims, enjoyed deceiving people, especially the police, and lacked any sense of guilt. His murders escalated in brutality over time, and he even killed his own wife when she became an obstacle. Psychotic breakdown? Some experts speculate that by the time of his arrest in 1953, Christie was descending into psychosis. He wandered London aimlessly after fleeing 10 Rillington Place, seemingly unable to maintain his former composed persona. During his trial, his lawyers argued that he was insane, but medical professionals ruled that, despite his depraved actions, he understood the difference between right and wrong. He was convicted and hanged in 1953. The wrongful execution of Timothy Evans was a pivotal moment in the movement against capital punishment in the UK. It exposed deep flaws in the British justice system and helped drive legal reforms. Public outcry. As details of Christie's crimes emerged, it became clear that the wrong man had been hanged. Public confidence in the judicial system began to waver, leading to debates about whether capital punishment should continue. The Royal Commission on Capital Punishment in 1953 investigated whether the death penalty could be made foolproof. While it stopped short of recommending abolition, it highlighted major flaws in police procedures and wrongful convictions. In 1957, the Homicide Act was introduced, restricting the use of the death penalty to only the most extreme cases, such as police killings and murders committed during robbery. This was seen as a step toward abolition. By the 1960s, cases like Timothy Evans and Derek Bentley's, another wrongful execution, had convinced lawmakers that the death penalty was unsafe. In 1965, the Murder, Abolition of Death Penalty Act was passed, suspending the death penalty for murder for 5 years. It was made permanent in 1969. Eventually, capital punishment was completely abolished for all crimes in the UK in 1998. The Christie Murders and the wrongful execution of Timothy Evans remain one of the darkest episodes in British legal history. John Christie was a manipulative serial killer with deep psychological issues, including a need for control, sexual sadism, and an absence of empathy. Timothy Evans, an innocent man, was wrongly hanged due to police incompetence and judicial failures. His case played a crucial role in the abolition of the death penalty, ensuring that no innocent person would ever be executed again in Britain. How the case has been portrayed in books and films. The Christie Murders and the wrongful execution of Timothy Evans have been the subject of numerous books, films, and TV series. The case remains one of the most infamous miscarriages of justice in British history, and its retellings often focus on the failure of the legal system and the psychological depths of John Christie. Several books have explored the case, providing detailed accounts of Christie's crimes, the police investigation, and Timothy Evans's wrongful execution. 10 Rillington Place, 1961, by Ludovic Kennedy, one of the most influential books on the case, written by journalist Ludovic Kennedy. It argues that Timothy Evans was innocent and that the justice system failed him. This book played a major role in raising awareness of the case and influencing the abolition of the death penalty in Britain. It remains one of the definitive sources on the case. The Two Rillington Places, 1971, by R.E. Harriman, focuses on contradictions and inconsistencies in the original police investigation, explores the possibility of police misconduct and how Christie was able to manipulate authorities. John Christie of Rillington Place, Biography of a Serial Killer, 1987, by Jonathan Oates, a more psychological look into Christie's life and crimes, analyzes his childhood, psychological profile, and killing methods. The Secret Serial Killer, The True Story of John Christie, 2016, by Linda Stratmann, examines Christie's entire life, from his early offences to his serial killings. It explores his double life as both a seemingly respectable man and a manipulative murderer. The Christie Murders have been adapted into several notable films and TV dramas, often focusing on Christie's psychological depravity and the tragic fate of Timothy Evans. 10 Rillington Place, 1971. Film director Richard Fleischer, starring Richard Attenborough as John Christie, John Hurt as Timothy Evans, Judy Geeson as Beryl Evans. Plot: a highly realistic and disturbing portrayal of the murders at 10 Rillington Place. Why it's important: Attenborough's portrayal of Christie is chillingly accurate. John Hurt's performance as Timothy Evans effectively conveys the tragedy of his wrongful execution. The film helped further public awareness of the miscarriage of justice. Trivia: Richard Attenborough stayed in character as Christie even off-set, unnerving other actors due to the role's eerie realism. A Rillington Place, 2016. BBC TV miniseries starring Tim Roth as John Christie, Samantha Morton as Ethel Christie, and Nico Miralegro as Timothy Evans. This three-part series provides a more in-depth look at Christie's manipulation of those around him. Tim Roth portrays Christie as a soft-spoken yet deeply sinister figure. The series gives more focus to Ethel Christie, showing her slow realization of her husband's crimes. It also highlights the police incompetence that led to Evans's execution. To Encourage the Others, 1972 TV drama. Based on the book by David Yallop, it is a courtroom drama-style retelling of Timothy Evans's trial. The drama criticizes the British legal system and how it ignored flaws in the prosecution's case. Several documentaries have explored the case in depth, often revisiting new evidence or legal discussions about the miscarriage of justice. Crimes That Shook Britain, John Christie, 2010. This documentary examines Christie's chilling killing spree and, well, how he managed to deceive the police. It also highlights the tragic and wrongful execution of Timothy Evans. Born to Kill, John Christie, 2013. Part of the Born to Kill series, which explores the psychology of serial killers, it investigates whether Christie was born a killer or shaped by his environment. Murder Maps: The Murders at 10 Rillington Place, 2016. A forensic-style breakdown of Christie's crimes and police failings. The case remains one of the most infamous examples of wrongful execution in Britain. The abolition of the death penalty in the UK was largely influenced by the Evans case. Christie's method of murder, gassing victims before strangulation, has been referenced in other crime fiction and films. The Christie Murders and the wrongful execution of Timothy Evans have been retold in books, films and TV dramas for decades. The film 10 Rillington Place, 1971, remains one of the most haunting depictions. The BBC miniseries Rillington Place, 2016, provides a modern, psychological look at the case. The book 10 Rillington Place by Ludovic Kennedy played a major role in exposing the miscarriage of justice. The case continues to be a cautionary tale about the dangers of wrongful convictions, police incompetence, and the fallibility of capital punishment.